Welcome to the Marketing Mentor Podcast with Elise Bennin, founder of marketing-mentor.com and author of 7 books, including The Creative Professional's Guide to Money. Since 2008, Elise has been interviewing her clients and other successful professional creatives who are doing what it takes to stop the feast or famine syndrome, get better clients, and command the fees they deserve, and sharing the nuts and bolts of what they've learned so you can do it too. You can find more at marketing-mentor.com. And now, here's Elise Bennin.
Do you have a standard contract with clients? If not, you're not alone. In fact, you'd be surprised how many creative professionals don't use a contract. You know, of course, that without a contract, it's much harder to get paid. Plus, you don't come across as a professional, and people are much more likely to take advantage of you. Well, there is a solution. And in today's podcast interview, I spoke with Caitlyn Pierce from Freelancers Union about their new freelance-friendly contract tool built in partnership with and.co. They hope it will become the recognized standard contract for freelancers of all kinds, and that from now on, you will never again work without one. That will certainly enhance the quality of your business and make you more professional and respected. Speaking of which, another way to up-level your business is to use higher quality and more authentic images in your content marketing. Well, I've got the perfect resource for you. My new partner and sponsor, 2020, has crowdsourced millions of real-world photos available under a simple royalty-free license, and they're offering listeners of the Marketing Mentor podcast a 5-photo free trial. To start yours right now, go to 2020.com/mm podcast. That's the word 20, then 20.com/mm podcast to get 5 free photos that don't suck. And now here's today's podcast interview with Caitlyn Pierce from Freelancers Union. Listen, and then be sure to try the contract on your next client. Hello, Caitlyn. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Elise. Thanks so much for having us.
You're welcome. Please introduce who you are.
So I'm Caitlyn Pierce. I'm the Director of Member Engagement at Freelancers Union.
Excellent. And I've been working with and promoting all the different initiatives over the years that the Freelancers Union has been doing. All really, in my opinion, important things that someone's got to do. So I'm glad that you guys and Sarah Horowitz have taken it upon yourself. And today we're talking specifically about a new one. So tell us about that.
Absolutely. And has been so great to work together in different ways over the years. So in the past few years, we've been working on this campaign that's really centered on the issue of non-payment, which we find that freelancers, no matter what industry you're working in or what type of clients, it's a very common problem to get paid on time and in some cases get paid at all. We find all too often that freelancers are really struggling in this area. We actually did a report last year and found that 70% of freelancers have had issues getting paid. Wow. And on average, they're losing $6,000 a year when they do.
Wow.
So regardless of your income, that's a pretty big issue. So we have been working on it for a while, and we initiated this campaign called Freelance Isn't Free, which is really a national campaign, but started in New York City, where we, over the past year, were able to pass first-of-its-kind legislation called the Freelance Isn't Free Act. And this law basically would give freelancers protections where right now they really don't have any to help them make sure they get paid on time.
So tell me then, how is this different from taking a client who's not paying you to small claims collections court?
So now if you're having a problem getting paid, you rightly said you can go to small claims court. that can be a challenge and a financial burden to do that when you're already out of pocket to hire a lawyer. And so this law helps you in a couple different ways. First of all, the law mandates that you have to have a contract if you're doing more than $800 of work. And so hopefully by having stronger work agreements, it actually helps freelancers at the outset from having problems down the road. And then if you are having a challenge, you have two options, one of which is brand new, which is as a freelancer in New York City, you can go to the Department of Consumer Affairs and file a complaint, and they will be there to help you try to resolve your grievance. And then you can also, as you could before, go to small claims court or to court to sue. And under this new legislation, you would be able to be awarded double damages and attorney's fees, which was really designed to help enable people to take cases to court. But of course, no freelancer wants to go to court. So hopefully by having stronger work agreements at the outset, that might help mitigate it. Plus just sort of having more of a culture around knowing that this is a problem and that freelancers really have to get paid on time for the work they do.
Mm-hmm. And I do see in my work with clients, when we put basic business practices in place, that most people, number one, don't have a contract for a lot of different reasons. One is they don't have a contract and they're not a lawyer and they don't know where to get one. And I know that you're addressing that issue, so we'll talk about that. But the other is that often, you tell me if you've heard this also, that people are afraid to put a contract on the table, even if they do have one, because they're afraid it's going to scare the client away, or the client's not going to want to sign it, or that it will create some kind of barrier to getting the work. Do you see that?
Unfortunately, yes, particularly in some industries where there's really more of a handshake culture. Film and television in New York being a big one, where we see just a very small rate of people that have a contract, or when freelancers try to insist on one, the hiring party, just saying, well, we'll go to someone else that doesn't need this. And that is a very real risk.
Mm-hmm. So there's the fear that this is going to be the effect, and in some cases it's not at all. And in fact, my own experience is that it weeds out those kind of bad clients and prospects in the first place who won't sign a contract. But also, as you're saying, there are situations where the client doesn't want to deal with a contract, doesn't want to make it formalize the process, and does in fact go to someone else.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I think, that was a big reason why we wanted this contract mandate in here, to try to set some standards around the work. And hopefully those are really positive. As you said, you want to work with clients that want to have good business practices, just because it'll overall be a positive experience, even beyond, getting paid on time. And also, we really want to change the culture around freelance work, and really give it more respect and more standards. And we think that having, a clearly stated contract with payment terms is a great first step to do that.
And it also sounds to me like what you're doing is helping freelancers take responsibility for this part of the process, for this part of their business, so that their clients aren't allowed to take advantage of them.
Well, hopefully that really is the case. The way the law is structured is that the burden of the contract falls on the client, or the hiring party is the only one who can get penalized for not having one or for refusing to have one. But, as most know who have done this before, you're really at more of an advantage as a freelancer when you're initiating your contract that you feel comfortable with. All too often we see freelancers who are getting different types of contracts from companies that have all sorts of terms and provisions in them, some of which can be quite draconian, and they don't understand it, nor do they have easy access to a lawyer to review and negotiate a contract for them. So having one that you like and that you know is going to protect your work and is fair is a really great first step.
Right, because the reality is that even if the client gives you their contract to sign, it's not written with you in mind. It's written with them in mind.
Exactly.
Good. So tell us about this new standard contract.
So we have partnered with a company called &Co. And what we did was we really set out to create a contract that was both, freelance friendly and that offered guidance to workers in how to set up a contract that would protect their work. And that was also, a standard contract that's relatively fair and balanced, sort of like the way we have a standard lease agreement, where it could be a recognizable standard that would be easy for both parties to sign. So that was our big goal in starting it. We've just launched the first version of this contract, the freelance contract, which you can find on our website. And it's very hard to have one contract template that encapsulates everything about freelance work. So our idea is to start with, basic terms and provisions and sort of crowdsource it. And as we get different feedback from members in different industries, have more and more guidance on clauses and different ways to protect yourself that can go into the template.
And it seems to me, Caitlyn, that this is not your first attempt at this, because I do remember there was a contract creator a couple of years ago on the Freelancers Union website. How is this one different?
So we, one of the nice things about partnering with a great startup like &Co is they were able to provide a great technology platform to really make this one more user-friendly. So the improvements we made were, rather than have a freelancer come on and read different contract terms and sort of be able to cut and paste, and we really just walk you through a series of questions about your work and the way that you try to structure your work. And based on how you answer those questions, a contract is generated for you. And so that was sort of the main update that we made, was to try to make it really as easy as possible to use. And then this also has a feature that would allow you to e-sign. So, from the tool, send it to your client and do it that way, or you can download the contract and manage that part yourself.
So how long does it take to create a contract?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, it really shouldn't take more than, a couple of minutes, to be honest, depending on, what we do is we've provided a very simple framework for, going over payment terms, setting up milestones and deliverables, having different clauses around termination, or, helping guide you around whether you can ask for money up front, and these sorts of things that just help protect you. If you're doing something that's much more sophisticated than that, you're probably going to want to either take our template and review it with a lawyer, or come up with something more customized for yourself. It's really just meant to be a very basic agreement that should not take long at all to set up.
Mm-hmm. And I would think part of the resistance that people have in general to contracts is some kind of fear of the legalese. And I would think this contract, which I did try to do on myself, and it was relatively easy, has some of this legalese in it. How do we help people over that fear of, I don't understand what this means, so I can't use it?
Yes, and I also suffer from that fear of legalese. So I completely understand it. It can be very intimidating reading a contract term and thinking, well, I think I know what this means, but I can't be totally sure. And, what we tried to do, and what I'd like to continue our work in doing, is we try to kind of walk through each term and have a lot of guidance text. So if it comes to, having a termination fee, there's a little pop-up that says, this is what this is, or this is when you would do it. When it comes to a licensing agreement, it explains, the basics of what these things mean and when you would do it. And we try to provide a lot of hand-holding and guidance where we can. I think there's a lot more work we can do in that front. And we do have a lot of resources that we offer separate from this tool that help you sort of become more savvy with what different contract clauses mean. But it really can be intimidating. And I think the more you can just put things into very plain language terms, the better.
So once someone has created a contract, do you have any suggestions for how they can then use it or present it to a client? Is that part of the resources that you offer? Oh, and I remembered what I was going to say. Is there a video tutorial that kind of walks people through it so they can see before they actually try it?
No, and that was actually one piece of feedback we got from some of our users was we really want to see what the output looks like before we start doing this for real.
Right.
So we're going to make that available soon. But it's certainly a tool you can go on and play around with, and then, it does not have to get sent or anything like that. So if you just want to check it out and see what the template looks like, feel free to do that. Mm-hmm. In terms of actually presenting it to a client, our hope is that in the long term, this could be something that becomes sort of ubiquitous enough that it's recognizable, and we can start to say this is the preferred contract of these big companies, or of course, of Freelancers Union and its members, so that both companies and freelancers can have some confidence in just saying, okay, well, it's probably pretty good. Let me just look at it, because the idea would be to eliminate as much negotiation and back and forth as possible. Recognizing, of course, it's never possible to completely eliminate that. But we do a lot of work at Freelancers Union, both in terms of workshops and in terms of providing resources on how to communicate with clients. And one of the things that we do offer on our website is a little plain language guide to the Freelance Isn't Free Act, which is going to go into effect on May 15th. And hopefully that would give freelancers some backup so that when you say, well, actually, I really need my payment terms to be in 30 days, that's actually the new standard that's being set by this law. It's not just something, crazy that I'm asking for. This is something that everyone's going to be doing.
And so last question, what if you don't live in New York and so this law isn't part of the law of the land yet? What can other freelancers in other places do to help bring it, or at least make their clients aware of it?
Well, we would really love to see this law get adopted in other places. Our hope is if you can get it done in New York, you can do it anywhere. But obviously the contract and using a contract regularly and making that a standard part of your business practice, really is regardless of this legislation. It's something that all freelancers should be doing and advocating for. And the more freelancers that are asking for this and treating, their business like a business, that the easier it's going to be doing that in the future. We have started to see some other cities take interest in bringing the legislation to their city, and we actually have a petition going nationwide to try to mobilize freelancers to bring the law to their area. So you can always get involved with us and try to mobilize to get it passed where you live if you're not in New York.
And I would think, actually, given the current political climate, that people are more open to doing something that will benefit them and looking for something they can actually participate and take action on. Are you experiencing that?
We are. I mean, we certainly have seen, an increase in activism and an increase in sort of our members saying, how can we get involved? And we were really starting to see more recognition across policymakers that this is a growing workforce that needs to be supported. And that was certainly evident in getting this law passed in New York. And so our hope is that there's some momentum built here and we can really continue this conversation and more on a national scale.
All right, actually, I'm sorry. I have one more question. This really is my last question. You said that $800 is what? The limit or the minimum job that will require a contract. Why 800?
So this is the minimum threshold for the Freelance Isn't Free Act in general. So for those new remedies and protections, it is for over $800 worth of work, and that is over the period of 4 months. So if you did different jobs for the same client for 4 months, it could add up to 800 and be covered under the law. This was just a negotiation point that we had with getting the law passed. Our hope was to make it a little bit lower. But of course, because this is such a wide-reaching piece of legislation that really covers any service contracts, this was the threshold that they ended up setting for these remedies to go into effect.
Well, then let's say my advice is that in terms of the contract, it doesn't matter what the number is, even if it's $50, even if it's $200, you should definitely, nothing is too small, in my opinion, for putting a contract in place. Would you agree? Does the Freelancers Union agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. And, certainly we see a lot of aggrieved freelancers with non-payment issues for $100, for $200. And that every little bit matters, especially when you're stringing together a lot of gigs of that amount. So I think you should take all the steps you can to protect your work, even if it's for smaller gigs.
Excellent. All right, Caitlyn, tell the listeners where they can find information about this.
Absolutely. So if you want to check out the freelance contract, you can find it on our website, which is www.freelancersunion.org/contract. And then we also have a ton of resources on non-payment, how to go to court, how to have a good contract to protect yourself on our resources section of our website, which is freelancersunion.org/resources. And if you want to get involved in our activism around the legislation, you can go to freelanceisntfree.org and sign our petition and get involved. And of course, if you're not a member of the union, you should definitely become a member because it's free and we provide tons of great education and resources on all matters freelance.
Excellent. Thank you, Caitlyn, and thanks, Sarah Horowitz, for everything that you are all doing to advocate for the self-employed. I really appreciate it.
Yes, thanks so much for having me. It was great to talk to you, Elise.
Thanks for listening. Now go try out what you've learned. If you like what you hear, you can go to marketing-mentor.com and sign up for Elise's quick tips from Marketing Mentor and her free 30-minute mentoring session to get your burning questions answered. Check out what's on sale in the Marketing Mentor shop, like the Pick a Niche Kit, proposal bundles for designers and copywriters, and the 30 Minutes a Day marketing plan. Elise is also the host of the How Design